Hello and welcome to Hockey Talk. My name is Jared Schneider along with Jordan Pekka right here on Shaw TV. And you know what, Jordan? It's been a good week in the NHL. We've had a couple of good weeks lately. Some teams hot, some teams cold, some incidents, some pretty good incidents last night. I think we should just lead off with this one. We had Adam Pardy of the Winnipeg Jets who made a hit into the glass, hit a Chicago Blackhawk player into the glass, knocked the glass out. You saw a whole incident where the guy grabbed his helmet, lady dumped a beer. There was a whole bunch going on for like 20 seconds. Jordan, what do you think of the whole incident?
I think it was pretty funny. I think it's what happens when you mix hardcore fans with money to spend on $10 beers. This is what you end up with. But I don't think I've ever seen a fan take a player's helmet. I mean, you see guys get dumped on the bench, and sometimes the glass breaks. There's a little bit of fan interaction. But I've never seen a fan reach over and just take a player's helmet. And then the best part is, not even try and hide it and get away with it. Doesn't tuck it under his shirt. Puts it on his head and shows the world that I stole the helmet, because he's not going to get caught for that.
Oh, I know. And the thing is, like, Adam Pardy was so cool about it, too. Like, they interviewed him after, and he's like, yeah, I just felt my helmet get ripped off. Like, the chin strap was on and everything, pulled the chin strap right off. This guy was, like, reaching around the pane of glass and just pulled it off. And, yeah, like you said, just put it on his head. And this guy, he was loaded. Like, you could tell he was spilling beer all over this place. And his wife, right when he grabbed the helmet, I don't know what she was doing, but just decided to just dump her beer. Like got a little bit on Pardy, a little bit. Most of it, actually, I think, kind of went on the ref. And it was just, like, the whole situation, like, Pardy said the Winnipeg Jet bench smelled like beer after, because he had it all over his shoulder and his arm and stuff. But anyway, and that's on the kind of lighter side of hockey right now. I mean, it's a pretty funny incident. If we jump into some teams, we got some hot teams, some cold teams. Who are you finding maybe for hot teams, maybe some surprising teams so far this year?
Well, I think we talked a lot about Colorado and their hot start. Moving away from them, I guess San Jose has been really, really good. And they've been a really good team for a few years, so no real surprise there. But teams like Phoenix or Minnesota, teams that generally for the last couple of years haven't been so great, really making pushes to be the top teams in their division this year. And then, of course, other teams, Chicago, naturally really good for the last few years. And other teams in the East, I think Tampa Bay and Toronto really coming out of the East as teams that no one expected to be quite so good.
Yeah, absolutely. Tampa 10-4, leading that division. That's a good division. That's got Boston, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Detroit in it now. That's a good division. For Tampa to be winning that, I think, is pretty impressive so far earlier in this year. And like I mentioned before, they're doing without Drouin too. Like, they've got their first round pick still in the minors, so he's going to come up, and that team's only going to get better throughout the next couple of years. You mentioned Minnesota and Phoenix. I like both of those teams, what they've done so far this year. But I think the real testament is going to be if they can do it throughout the rest of the year. Because now they could be some slumpy teams. They could be a hot and cold throughout the year. Not the biggest media centers there between Minnesota and Phoenix. So there isn't a whole lot of pressure. So maybe they do get some nice win streaks. You see it in Anaheim too. They've got like 13-3-1 already.
Absolutely.
Phenomenal after losing their first game of the year. Some of the hot teams that I've really noticed, and just from watching it, is in the Central Division, because I've watched the Central Division with the Jets. The four teams in there right now, you got Chicago, Minnesota, like we mentioned, St. Louis, and Colorado. I think Colorado's been the biggest surprise, obviously, but all four of those teams right now have above 500 records, and their winning percentage is all around 700. Like,
absolutely phenomenal. It's a surprise. It is.
Yeah, and then cold teams. What do you think about some cold teams?
I think we got to mention, teams like Buffalo. Unfortunately, they've been as good as they were a few years ago. They've been kind of that bad since. I mean, Ryan Miller's not the goalie he used to be, and that team traded away Thomas Vanek recently, and they really don't have a lot to show for it. Unfortunately, Winnipeg, I don't think off to the hot start they wanted to be off to. And then teams like Florida. I mean, for a long time, Florida hasn't been a great team, but they made a couple big moves in the offseason, especially picked up Tim Thomas. They hoped he would be a big player, and unfortunately, that team has, I think, 3 wins. They're really not that hot this year. And honestly, unfortunately, the Islanders, they had a whole slew of young guys on their team, a whole slew of talent that they were building on. And this past year, they seem to have kind of demolished what they were building towards, and they don't really have much to show for it now.
Yeah, I didn't like that trade with Molson a while back for Vanek. I mean, Vanek's been a good player. He's scored some goals there. He's filled in very nicely for this year, but I think the Islanders got to continue building to the future like some of the other teams have. You look at, for example, Colorado, Edmonton, Florida, even Tampa Bay, they're all getting those high draft picks the past couple of years. And you look at what some of the teams have been able to do with them. Like Colorado, for example, just even without McKinnon being an absolute superstar on that team, they've played phenomenal this year. Tampa, like we said, without Drouin this year, playing phenomenal. You got Florida, who's got guys like Huberdeau and Barkov and stuff, who've actually done kind of the opposite. They've only got 3 wins this year already. So, I mean, they're kind of plummeting. They're in the same direction as Edmonton. Like Edmonton, all those number 1 overall picks. And they've been a disappointment. I know Oilers fans, aren't really excited about what that team's done the past couple of years.
Well, I think Edmonton's big problem is that for the 3 or 4 years, they were the worst team in the league, and they got the first overall draft pick. And when you get the first overall draft pick, it's almost expected that you pick the top forward in the draft. And so for years, they pick forward after forward after forward. And so they have a couple really good lines of scoring forwards, but on the back end, they have nothing. They have really, really shoddy defense, and unfortunately, really, really spotty goaltending. And until they find a way to boost that up, either through trades or free agency or pick up a defenseman in the draft, I think they're going to have a tough time being competitive.
Yeah, Colorado and Edmonton kind of have similar teams in a sense. Colorado doesn't have very good defensive core. They had the worst defensive core in the league last year, and goaltending was kind of shaky last year. They were giving up 4 or 5 goals a game, and the difference between the two teams this year, between a 12-win team and a 3-win team, has been goaltending and defense. Basically coming out of nowhere. You got Jaguar, who's like undefeated as a goaltender. He's got a couple of shutouts. Varlamov's played phenomenal. The defensive core has played great. Every player on that team is in a plus, and the plus minuses, they've all got huge pluses. And then Ottawa or Edmonton on the other side, right? They're the complete opposite. Like you said, no defense, no goaltending. So it's just the way it's worked. I mean, you can have all the forwards you want, but it's not going to win you a championship team. And you'll see it with the Olympics this year too. I mean, they're going to have all the offensive on all the teams, but it's going to be the teams with the defensive core that's going to, sort of make the difference there. We talked a little bit about the Jets. How do you think they're kind of doing so far this year? I mean, I guess you could kind of count them as one of the cold teams or one of the disappointment teams so far. It's only
it's only early in the season still. They got lots of time, but I think some of the guys like Kane and Byfuglien have been underperforming. There's a couple goals I've seen lately, and Byfuglien's out of position, or one of the forwards isn't covering their man coming back. They're not back checking hard. The defense isn't grinding it out. They're not hitting guys. And it looks kind of bad for the goaltenders as well. Their stats don't look so good, but a lot of the goals against aren't their fault. Guys are out of position. They're not clearing the front of the net. And I think the Jets do have a lot to move forward with. I think they can be a good team. They have some real positives they can build on. They beat Detroit earlier this week.
Yeah.
And, so that's something that people didn't expect, but it's something they can use. And I think they just have to gain consistency. And once they're a consistently good team, you'll see the wins.
Absolutely. Consistency is one of the main things, I think, in the NHL. You look at teams like San Jose, LA, Anaheim, they've all been consistent throughout the years. Maybe not so much in the playoffs, but anyway, that's a different story, But like the Jets, you're right. I mean, 2 tough losses to Chicago. Tough schedule the past week or so. Chicago twice, losing both of those games. Beat Detroit, though, but then like last year, for example, they lost some tough games to like Florida. I mean, they were in that Southeast Division last year, lost some tough games to Florida. Kind of seeing it again this year with teams that, they should be beating. If they want to make the playoffs, they've got to be beating these teams. And yeah, they'll beat the superstar team every once in a while, but they lose the tough game too much, I think, and it just sort of starts to pile up and pile up and pile up, because you're going to need more wins, obviously, than losses if you're going to make the playoffs, especially in this league and especially in the division at their end with some of the hot starts that we've seen from Colorado and Minnesota.
Absolutely.
Maybe sticking with defensive crops and defensive players, we've got guys like Subban and Karlsson. I know you love Karlsson, leading the league in points. Maybe defensemen, what are some of the surprises you've seen so far this year with them?
I think PK Subban's been a bit of a surprise. I mean, everyone knows he's a good puck-moving defenseman, but he had some contract disputes, and I know his teammates weren't so happy with the way he handled it. It was kind of a distraction to the team. And so I wasn't really sure how he would respond to all that, if the guys would accept him back in the locker room. But he's played really, really well. He's made some great outlet passes. He's working the power play, and he's doing what they're paying him for, as much as his attitude might throw his teammates off a little bit. He's doing his job, and I think they're happy about that. And we see it in Montreal's record. They've been a hot team this year. And then, of course, on the other side, Ottawa with Erik Karlsson. I mean, he came into the league again. Another superstar defenseman, gets tons of points, leads the league in points, Norris Trophy winning defenseman, and then he gets injured. And he's gone for most of last year. And he comes back this year, and people are wondering, is he going to be as fast? Is he going to be as quick? Are his passes going to be as good? Because when he came back at the end of last year, he wasn't the same player. He wasn't as good as he was at the start of the year. But so far this year, he has been that good. He's now leading the league in points for a defenseman. And so I think that's something the Sens can build off of. Very similar to Winnipeg. The Sens have some things they can use to vault themselves into a consistent team, and I think he's going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think Subban and Karlsson, I agree with you. They've both, I think, played almost to their potential so far this year. They've each won a Norris Trophy the past couple of years. So it was kind of a battle this year. It was kind of see, okay, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Karlsson? Is it going to be Subban? So far, Karlsson's got the upper hand. We've seen Subban, who's played limited minutes the past couple of weeks. He's been turning the puck over, and he threw the game away to Colorado the other night when they played on Adam Foote's retirement night. But I think he's played all right. He's kind of in there. He's obviously up there for points. He's still in the top 20 in the league. He's second for defensemen. So he's been playing all right. Carlson back to where he is, I find. He's been a phenomenal defenseman. There's, no worries there. He plays both ends of the ice. He's a very good puck-moving defenseman. He's great. But maybe now moving away from defensemen, if we hop into some of the divisions. We've got the new divisions this year, 4 divisions. I just want to touch a little bit on the Metropolitan Division. I know that's the division with Pittsburgh, both New York teams, Philly, New Jersey. They're kind of expected to play good this year. I mean, those teams were all good. You got Washington as well. They've all been good teams, but they've been a disappointment to me. I'm not going to lie. I think they've been a disappointment to me so far. Pittsburgh obviously still like 11-4, 11-5, whatever that they are. Washington's 8-7, but everyone else, all 6 of their teams are under 500, and I find that a disappointment.
Absolutely. I think it was a division that people expected a lot out of. I mean, Pittsburgh's been great, and they still are. But everybody else, teams like Philly, unfortunately, they had a terrible start to the season. And New Jersey, unfortunately, with Kovalchuk leaving after the draft and after free agency started, he really handicapped his team. And so I think it was kind of a write-off there. But some of the other teams, absolutely, teams that have consistently always battled for a playoff spot. And right now, they're out of the playoffs.
Yeah. You know what? I can agree. I mean, we'll see what's going to happen. You got the 2 wildcard teams. Maybe they come out of the other division, Toronto and Ottawa and Montreal. But anyway, maybe we'll hop into picks for this week.
All right.
So weeks last week. You were 3-4. I was 4-3. So together,
Ouch. 500.
We're both now under 500. You're 17-18 on the year. It's all right. I'm 14-21. So I'm going to need to get all 7
as long as I'm beating you
to get something going again.
All right.
But anyway, we'll start tonight. We got a big Western matchup. Vancouver's on that big road swing right now. They're in San Jose to take on the Sharks.
Holy smokes, that is a tough game. Vancouver going through kind of a rebuild year almost. They're coming into their own. They're a great team, and San Jose has been so hot this year. I will go with Canadian content and take Vancouver.
You're going to take Vancouver. You know what I like? Vancouver's been playing all right this year, but I think I was talking with a buddy of mine the other night, and Vancouver, I think they're going to get a pretty big wake-up call here on this Western road swing, when they go down to San Jose, LA, Anaheim, and Phoenix, and they play 4 unbelievable teams so far this year. If they can get 2 wins, I think they should be happy. If they can get 4 points out of a possible 8, that's great for them. But I'm going to take San Jose in this one. San Jose's just been too strong so far this year, especially on home ice. So I'll take San Jose. Tomorrow, Friday night, we've got Calgary in Colorado.
Calgary, one of the teams I think we touched on being a bit of a disappointment this year. Unfortunately, they were supposed to come out pretty hot. They lost to Ginla. I think it's still kind of hurting them. I will take Colorado.
You're going to take Colorado. You know what? I'm going to agree with you on this one. I watched the Avalanche play the Predators last night, and they had a chance to tie a record for most wins in 14 games or something like that with 13. Didn't happen. Lost Nashville, but that's all right. I think they're going to bounce back tomorrow. Calgary's been some games they look phenomenal with Monahan. Some games they're just
inconsistent.
They're kind of like the Jets this year. I mean, they're not a disappointment because they weren't expected to win a Stanley Cup. But, they've still been losing a couple of games every here and there. So I'm going to take Colorado in this one. Then Saturday, we've got a new divisional matchup. Wasn't a divisional matchup before, but we've got Tampa and Detroit to take on the Red Wings.
The Red Wings kind of another spotty team, kind of up and down. And Tampa Bay just been playing phenomenal lately. I will take Stamkos in Tampa.
Yeah, you know what? Tampa has been playing very well. They're leading that division. That's going to be a huge battle. That's going to be a great game to watch, I think. See if I can get my TV set to that one on Saturday night. Tampa and Detroit. I'll take Detroit on this one, though, just because, you know what, I like what Detroit's doing. They're at home. Tampa Bay, they've been playing well. You'll give you credit. They've got Stamkos who's scoring a ton of goals, but I'm going to take Detroit on this one just because I got a gut feeling. I got a gut feeling on this one. Sunday, we've got Edmonton in Chicago to take on the Blackhawks.
Chicago. I think they've been a super hot team this year, and I think they're gonna have a fairly easy game against Edmonton, unfortunately.
Yeah, Edmonton's been, you never know. Chicago's looked hot. They beat the Jets twice this week. I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to take Chicago as well. You know what? I just like some of the things they've been doing. Crawford's played very well, or well enough, I guess, for that team. And,
absolutely.
You know what? They've been a great team so far this year, and they're a great team to watch, as expected. So I'll take Chicago. Monday, we've got Tampa again in Boston, and it's the only game because it's Remembrance Day. But you know what? It's the only game in the NHL for whatever reason on Monday.
Tampa and Boston. Again, we talked about Tampa being so hot, but I think Boston, they need a game to show off their defense and a game to really build around. I think this is going to be the game. I will take Boston and their defense.
You're going to take Boston this one. Wow. You know what? It's a 1 o'clock local start. It's an afternoon game. It's in Boston. You know what? I'm going to take Tampa in this one. It's going to be 2 nights after the game against Detroit. If they don't win in Detroit, which I said they won't, I think they're going to come out firing. So I'll take Tampa in this one just because with Stamkos and the boys to beat Boston. Boston, I don't think they're scoring enough this year, even though Tampa's defensive crop hasn't been as good this year. I'll take Tampa in this one. Moving forward to Tuesday, we've got a great matchup. I like this one, actually. Phoenix in St. Louis.
And how long has it been since you said you're excited to watch
Phoenix
absolutely play a game? And they're in St. Louis, right?
Yeah, they're in St. Louis.
That'll be a great matchup, and I think St. Louis is going to use the home advantage. I'll take the Blues.
You know, and I'm going to agree with you on this one. I like St. Louis. They've been playing well this year. Not that Phoenix hasn't. You know, Phoenix played a great game against Anaheim last night. It was a great game to watch. But I'll take St. Louis in this. So just home ice. I like what St. Louis has been doing, and I think they're going to get the win in that one. Final night next Wednesday, we've got Philadelphia in Pittsburgh.
The Battle of Pennsylvania. It's, unfortunately, not much of a battle so far this year. One team going way up, one team not so close. I'll take Crosby in the Pens.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think just teams kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum right now. Pittsburgh's played very well lately. They lost a tough game to the Rangers rather last night, and they lost the other night as well. But they're going to bounce back. They're going to be a good team. They're going to be there towards the end of the year, and I think they're going to get this one done against Philly. So that pretty much wraps up picks for this week.
That's it. That's all. I think we're in for a really good week of games, and hopefully we can boost our records a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? It's been a great week, and you know what? Thanks for watching.